Who do I have on the telephone lines?
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Wendy McPherson, thank you. And who else?
Marshall.
Thank you, Marshall. That's two. Anyone else on the phone lines?
David McDonald here.
Thank you very much. Just making sure we have quorum. Anyone else?
Trustee Ryan Jacobs.
Thank you very much. We do have quorum now then. Okay, and we'll find out who else when we do roll call. I would like to welcome everyone to the January 24th, 2018 public session. I'm going to call an order and rise for the singing of O Canada. Thank you. Before I have the director do a roll call, we do have a lot of trustees online tonight. Some of them struck by illness, and some are in Toronto getting ready for a conference, but we do have them online. So, Director, I'll ask you to do a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, trustees. This is our roll call for our meeting of 24th January 2018. Trustee Armour. First Vice Chair Karkner.
Present.
Trustee Cram.
Present.
Trustee Jacobs.
Present.
Trustee Wendy McPherson.
Present.
Trustee Bill McPherson. Trustee McAllister.
Present.
Second Vice Chair McDonald.
Present.
Chair McMillan.
Present.
Trustee Richards. Trustee Swan.
Present.
Student Trustee Marshall Wilson.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Director. I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board approve consent agenda items 3.02 to 3.03, January 24th, 2018, as submitted. Moved by Trustee Karkner, seconded by Trustee McAllister. I should you cast your votes, please.
I'm in favor. We're just having some computer problems.
Thank you. And that carries. Thank you very much. Trustee McDonald, Trustee Swan, I assume we're in favor. Thank you. Are there any conflict of interest declarations? Seeing there are none, we're going to begin with the comments from the director and the chair, and we're going to start with moi. I'm going to go back to the back table, aren't I? So with my comments tonight, really they involve saying goodbye. And the first person that I want to say goodbye to is a young lady who I've watched at the back of this room for a long time. performed many, many roles for us. There was always a challenging, anytime we had a challenge, we just had to turn to Cindy and say, Cindy, could you help us with this? And you always came across in a very professional way. We are going to miss you dearly. We wish you the very, very best of luck in your future endeavors, and we know that you're going on to something that is exciting you. So for everything that you've done for us, thank you very, very much. Get you to come up here. The second goodbye, earlier tonight we had a bit of a saying goodbye from the staff, and this is for our superintendent of business, Nancy Barkley, who was leaving us. And it was a wonderful celebration. I want to give a special thanks to Mr. Miles and Mr. Reardon and the hospitality students at Thousand Island Secondary School for giving us all the food that's probably added about 20 pounds to me before I even leave tonight. It was excellent. The food was great, and so thank you very much. What do we say, Nancy? You know, it's we're losing an absolutely excellent person, not just as a superintendent of business, but an excellent person. It's never easy to say goodbye to someone that we've always trusted, someone that always gave us absolute honesty. As I said earlier tonight, the business of finance in the school area is complicated. And for people outside the board, it's almost impossible to understand. It's that complex. For us at the board table, it's even more complex because we have to make decisions based on numbers that are huge. And you always help break it down in a way that we could understand. Because for us to make an informed decision, we had to understand it. And I always smile every time you'd always say, remember, this is just an estimate. At the end of the day, we always knew that when you presented to us, we were getting honesty, we were getting the numbers as they were. And we cannot thank you enough for that. We hate to see you go. But on another hand, we're happy to see you move on to the next chapter of your life, because I've known over the last little while that that you made your announcement that there was no talking you out of this. You know what you're doing is right for you. And so when anyone leaves knowing that they have something they want to accomplish beyond work, we all have to be happy for you. So as sad as we are to see you go, we're incredibly happy for what lies ahead of you. I'd like you to come forward, and I know you do want to say a few words, but I'm going to present this to you. So on behalf of the board, best of luck, and thank you, thank you, thank you.
I didn't know I would go first, but I will. As everyone knows, most people know, I'm sure, the due this afternoon was supposed to be low-key, and it was, and that's what I had requested. However, I do feel compelled to say some words and keep my emotions intact if I can. So this will be brief because, as I said, the small speech tonight is probably going to be more difficult for me to make than all of those presentations that I've made at this table over the last several years. And frankly, over the past few months since I gave my notice, I've rehearsed the words in my mind, no matter where I was, at home, doing something. I rehearsed them in my mind, and they were perfect until I went last night to my desk at home and thought. I started to write them down, and I found it very difficult to put my thoughts to paper. However, they have to be on paper or I will ramble. I may ramble anyway. As others before me, I'm reluctant to be specific thank yous in terms of the risk of leaving someone out. So I will start by saying that I've had the great fortune both with this board, the Upper Canada District School Board, and the former Leeds and Grenville Board, to have worked with many, many dedicated and skilled staff, both here in the board office as well as in our schools. So I think that's probably pretty all-encompassing. I've also had the pleasure of working with and supporting very committed and student-focused trustees. I want to share something that I haven't shared before, that when I first took this position of superintendent, a former superintendent with whom I had worked long ago, and not very closely actually, said to me something that I have reflected on fairly often during the past 4.5 years as the superintendent of business. And he said to me, in realities, trustees really want you to do well in the role. And I can say, given my experience with this board, that I believe that he was correct. I've certainly felt and appreciated the support and respect of all the trustees during my tenure, even the ones that are up in the ceiling tonight. I must give a special thank you to Chair McMillan for his leadership and support, and for always making me feel comfortable at the board table. I want to thank the trustees who have been members of committees that I have had a connection with. Specifically, again, Trustee McMillan as part of the UCLC board, our Upper Canada Leger Centre for Education and Training. He sits as one of the directors on the board. Trustee Carol Karkner for her support of the Champions for Kids Foundation, for which I've been the treasurer. She and the Trustee Carol Karkner and the foundation provides tremendous support to students in need, and we have the president here tonight who could vouch for that as well. Thank you to trustees Bill McPherson and Susan Richards for welcoming me to SEAC on occasion, despite the news that sometimes I was bringing to the committee. As well, I want to thank our representatives on the Transportation Consortium STEO Governance Committee. So previously, Trustee McDonald sat as a trustee on that committee, and presently Chair McMillan and Trustee McAllister. In particular, I want to express a special thank you to our Audit Committee Chair, David McDonald, for working so collaboratively with Leanne and me to further develop the committee into one that I believe adds value to the organization and completes important work on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Also, thank you to Trustees McAllister and Armour for your worthwhile contributions as members of the Audit Committee. The senior team, well, they're a great bunch, a fun bunch. Firstly, I can tell you that they are dedicated to students and learning, no question about that. However, they would professionally and graciously pitch in and work with me and the rest of the team on financial challenges and achieving our financial goals. And this was in addition to the multitude of initiatives that they have underway throughout the year. I don't really know how they do it all. So I've enjoyed being part of such a very talented group. I've had the pleasure of spending the last week and a half with Bob, who will be introduced, my successor. And I must say that with each passing day, I feel more and more comfortable leaving my portfolios and staff in his hands. We've had a very full onboarding experience. We're a little more than halfway through it, and it's gone really well. In part, I would say, because of Bob's prior school board and public sector experience. We weren't starting from scratch. From my short time with Bob, I feel like I've known him much longer than I have, and I truly believe that he will be a great addition to the senior team and to the organization. To Director Sliwa, who I've shocked in the last little while, thank you for your guidance and support these last 2+ years. If I could pick out just a few of Steve's characteristics that I most appreciate, it would be his good nature, his integrity, and his sense of humor. I would definitely be remiss if I didn't thank the fantastic business support team that has worked with me, including those who have committed to have my back, as they told me at the beginning, as I learned the ropes of being a superintendent. They did not let me down, not once. And when I say business, I'm including the whole business area, the purchasing, payroll. I don't want to miss anybody, finance, of health and safety, community use, etc. So I want to publicly thank a list of very skilled and committed individuals by the names of Carol, Brad, Dennis, Judy, Michael, Diana, Claude, the management at STEO, and all of the other great staff who in turn support all of those leaders. These are great people who do superb work to support schools and the staff and the students in them. Here's where I make it emotional. Last but definitely not least, I must thank Leanne Webster. She is just the greatest executive assistant anyone could ask for. I tell her on a fairly regular basis that I wouldn't have been as successful as I was in the role had it not been for her support, her history, her knowledge, her skill, and her dedication to me, to the team, and of course to the organization. So Bob, you're getting a really good one. So just before I end, and since this is live streamed and not everybody will understand what this is about, but I must give a shout out, a thank you to the 4 young fellows who watch, and one of them is pretty young, who actually watch my board presentations and cheer me on. Cohen Kingston and the Webster boys, Ian, Eric, and Alan. So thanks, gentlemen, and this is the end of my presentation, so you can head off to studying or to bed. So in closing, I thank the board for its support and the opportunity to work for such a great organization that I really believe is doing great things for kids. And I wish the board and its students continued success. Thank you.
Director's comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For every goodbye and farewell leads to a hello. And tonight, ladies and gentlemen of the board, it's our pleasure to introduce to you Mr. Robert Backstrom. Bob is, as you've heard, is following up into the business superintendent role that Nancy is retiring from. And Superintendent Backstrom began with us on the 15th of January, and he's been so heavily involved in the onboarding process. He hasn't had really a spare moment to waste, and we wanted to make sure that we brought him in right away to all the things that we are doing. And I'm so happy to say that because Bob is a seasoned professional, that he landed right on his feet and started contributing to the organization on the very first day. We're very fortunate, Bob, that you've picked Upper Canada to continue your work in finance. We're going to be drawing upon a great deal of your business acumen and your experience in the next weeks and months to come, for sure, as we move closer trying to build a budget for the board. And we're so glad that you've chosen to join our team and bring your experience to bear for all the important things that we need to do on behalf of schools and students. So we welcome you to the team and to the board, and we're certainly looking forward to what you can contribute to keep us moving forward. Thank you. Mr. Chair, as well, the usual comments about our schools and students is so important. I'd like just to make one comment again, and it was at the last meeting as well, as our students were preparing for their final exams at the end of semester 1. Today was day 1 of exams, and we hope that our students had a productive experience and they could show their very best through that assessment experience. And as well, we know that their staff and their families are there to support them as they're working through this week and next week during the exam period, and we wish them the best of luck. Lastly, I just wanted to mention, ladies and gentlemen of the board, that we had our last session of the first round of our Director of Work Plan meetings with staff. We've met close to 200 staff over the last 10 weeks and discussing the plans of the board, their strategic plan and their work plan, and now the work plan that the senior team is carrying forward on behalf of the board to accomplish the objectives that the board has set. What was quite exciting for me was actually the very last session that we had last week was having a very diverse group of employees from the board, our central staff here at the board office, and people who perform central roles throughout the district. They brought such a wealth of information and insight to our dialogue, and I think that it's going to help us to narrow down how to address some of the goals as we move forward and how they can be party to what we're trying to accomplish on behalf of our schools and our students. The most important thing I heard was from one of Superintendent Hobbs' facility staff that said, if you want to make this work, you have to own the goal. And we have 4 goals in our work plan. We have 4 goals in our strategic plan that the board has given us. And when I heard that, I heard both a commitment and a call to action, and we're looking forward to moving forward, and their advice and their good counsel in these sessions have been just tremendous, and we're very excited by those experiences and glad that we can share those insights with you tonight at the board.
Thank you, Director. Just one quick comment I want to make. This is the time of the year when trustees get a lot of telephone calls because of the weather. And, you know, it seems that almost every year the weather becomes more of a challenge for us. We know that the decision to not run the buses is not solely made by any one individual. It's a team effort. And, you know, I would rather face 1,000 telephone calls from parents who are looking for clarity on the decision and us be wrong in terms of the weather than to have to deal with one call because we didn't close when we should have. Because the consequences of that mistake and the fallout from that mistake, I couldn't deal with it. Nothing is more precious than the lives of our students. They travel on those buses every day. It's very easy sometimes to look out our front window and go, wow, it's kind of nice on my street. But if I look at that map at the back of this room and I see how big this board is and I know the thousands and thousands of kilometers of back roads, I wouldn't want to be driving those buses on some of those days. So they're tough decisions. I know that. I know some of our community members are not pleased with our decisions. I think it just reinforces the fact that we always have to put the best interests of our young people at the forefront of every decision we make, because we can't afford to make a mistake. So I just want to say that, and I know we have some people around this table that make those decisions, are a part of the team. I applaud you for making those tough decisions that you have to make. Okay, a report from the private session of January the 10th. At that particular meeting, there was a recommendation, but due to the time sensitivity, we brought it to the board that night. And so that has been dealt with. Moving on to the next item, which is our delegations. And before we begin with the delegations, again, there may not look like there's a lot of people here at the table, but I can guarantee you, just as it was done in the United States a year ago, there's millions of people out there watching. So there's no pressure. Millions standing on the streets waiting for these presentations. We always enjoy having the schools come. And I can assure you that there are people watching, and I can assure you the people at this table are incredibly interested, as well as those on the phone lines. So saying that, I'd like to invite Lombardy Public School come forward. I'm going to ask Superintendent Coombs to introduce our principal and vice principal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite the CRAC administrative team from Lombardy Public School to the front right here. This is Principal Dave Morrison and Vice Principal Mark Wiltsey. And Dave is a very seasoned and experienced principal. He's had a couple of schools in our board and has a very steady hand on the tiller. Mark is a brand new rookie, And you can say, oh, the price tag's still on them here. But they make a great team, and they've really got a good thing going for the Lombardy Lightning. So I'll turn it over to Dave and to Mark, and I'm sure you'll appreciate their presentation.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you, Chair McMillan, and thank you for those kind words, Superintendent Coombs, Director Sliwa. We're honored to present this evening to you, and I guess what we'll do is we'll begin right away just with a very brief summary of Lombardy. So we have 324 students. It's a K-8 school with 14 classrooms. And our community demographics are such that we have people that commute to Ottawa to work, people that commute to Kingston, and we have a local group, just as most of our small rural communities have. We're on Highway 15, directly on the highway. It's about 15 minutes west of Smith Falls. And one of the unique things about our school is that we have a community partnership with the Rideau Lakes Public Library. And so 4 nights a week from 4 o'clock till 7, our school is open, and we have folks from the community that will come in and utilize that space. They also use it on Saturday mornings from 9 till 1. The last little tidbit that I'm going to share with you is that in the past 3 years, our population at the school has increased from 282 students to 324. Some of them are local families that are moving out from the urban environment. Some of them have come from private schools like some of the local church-based schools in the community, and some of them have switched from our co-terminus. So tonight we're here to talk to you about school improvement. And one of the things that I'd like to just point out, if you take a look at our school with regards to reading, we're going to start with our literacy goal. So we were primarily concerned with the trend in the reading results at the grade 3 level. And one of the things that we noticed going back over our data was that open response questions in general tended to be answered below sort of what we would say would be the provincial average and also board level. So we were concerned that we were kind of heading in the wrong direction. And what open response questions are, basically you have multiple choice and you have open response. And it was interesting when we looked at the kids' work that actually they were not usually using more than one piece of detail to support their answers. And that may seem very simplistic, but digging a little deeper, we looked primarily at nonfiction text, and kids don't always pull out the important pieces of information. They have trouble summarizing. They have difficulty looking at captions and diagrams and pulling out what's actually important detail to answer a question. So this last cycle, what we've tried to do in our SIPSA plan is provide them with explicit teaching around these text features. And one of the things that we noticed was that primarily 4 of the 6 marker students, and those each class would have, say, 3 students that they would look at, they tended to perform a little better with sort of the post-test that we did on them. We still have 2 of our marker students that were unable to provide two pieces of detail. Our literacy action moving forward is that we still think that we've got to spend a little more time doing some shared reading and looking explicitly at texts and trying to make that information connected to the questions that they're actually being asked. So moving on to the math. I don't know if I clicked that right. I'm going to go back to the data. So you'll notice the trend that it shows. You know, we recognize that our math results are far below what we would like them to be, in the sense that you see the red, which scores under 50%. And even though that may be in line with what's going across the district, and perhaps, we know the results at the provincial level are not great, we were pleased that we were trending in the right direction. So we really spent a lot of time, again, delving into the data, and what we saw was that in grade 3 and 6, our students performed 20% lower than the province in the measurement strand, which typically or historically, and many teachers will tell you, it's an easier strand to teach. So we were really perplexed by that. According to the historical data, and I just provided you with some examples there of questions from actual tests, our kids weren't able to do the conversion problems very well. So one of the things that we did was that we and again, I've just provided you with a baseline example. Question where, say, Janelle has 5 meters of string for a project. She has 325 centimeters already. So what is the remaining piece of string that Janelle needs? So with this one assessment, we found 16 of the 23 kids could actually answer that. And when we talked as a group within our SIPSA, we figured that the kids really struggle with what we would call a tangible reference point. So we thought, okay, let's take them out on the playground. We'll set up things like pylons. We'll use estimation. We'll use hands-on manipulatives, trundle wheels, meter sticks, and we'll give them problems where they have to be able to work and change measurement units. And we did a little bit more explicit teaching around metric conversions. And what we found was that of the marker students, 4 of the 6 could then make conversions. We still have 2 students of that group that could provide could do a conversion, but they didn't make the correct calculations in the actual math. So I don't know if that's a question of whether they read the question wrong. It requires us to do a little bit more further investigation. Okay, so the other part that we're really interested in, and I've brought my trusty vice principal along, and he really, as a new VP, was concerned about speaking to such an intimidating group. But he has done a tremendous amount of work with Tell Them From Me survey. He summarized the data in the school. And what we found, I would say in summary, is that students are asking for more opportunities to be involved in clubs that aren't just sports oriented. So we're a sports type of school, I guess you would say. So we have now a Masters of the Universe club, which is kind of like Mork from Mork or Nano. We have the Glee Club. We have a Move It group, which is a partnership with the Portland Community Health Agency, and they come in on Wednesday nights. So tonight from 5:30 to 7, we have 8 high school kids who run a nutrition activity Move It program in the gymnasium. And then we also found in that Tell Them From Me survey that anxiety, most of our kids feel very good about being at school, but they are stressed. And so what we determined was that we needed to run Zones of Regulation, which is a program that we use as a board. And we used our SSP, or what we used to call a behaviorist. In 5 classes, we needed to run 8 40-minute sessions with our students to try to give kids the ability to articulate how they were managing their stress levels. And again, we don't have any data to support whether it's effective yet, but we're still in the process of gathering that. The other thing that students really need was a sense of belonging. And so we have activities like the hot lunch helpers, the milk helpers, the people that put the signs up on the boards for the communication. We have kindergarten helpers and tech support office helpers as well. Lastly, I just want to mention our Button program, which the new VP has taken on as his project. And we wanted a recognition program that was kind of built around character traits, but what we wanted to really do is make it authentic. So each day, a teacher will come to the office and write a blurb in the announcement book about how so-and-so is either kind or done something for a particular student. It's not always the brightest or the most athletic or the most talented kids, but these are kids that are doing things for other students. And each day we recognize these students, and you get it's called a Lombardi button, which is basically a button with Lombardi lightning bolt on it. And then at the end of the week, we'll take a picture of that group and post it either to social media or on the website. Again, we feel that with these programs, we run a Strong Kids program, which is, again, a community partnership we set up to improve physical strength, and the PALS program, which is a recess program for teaching leadership to our 7s and 8s, and they provide games for our primary kids on the yard. And Mr. Wiltsey also set up something called The Table this year, where he worked with, there's a Perth community lady who came in, and with local produce we were able to provide food for kids and teach them about proper nutrition and how to prepare meals. So what our next steps are is we're going to continue to gather data through exit surveys. We've just recently done a staff survey to see, when we talk about a 360 survey where you're gathering data from the kids, we're gathering data from our superiors, and we're also gathering them from our teachers and our community to see what it is that we can do and where can we go next to make Lombardy a great place to live and to work and to learn. I think I've probably passed my 10 minutes.
I don't think it's going to matter tonight. No, I don't.
I did have a timer.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The trustee who in your area is Susan Richards. Trustee Richards, are you on the line? No, she's under the weather. Richard?
So, Mr. Chair, in the absence of Trustee Richards' comments, I'd like to offer maybe just two comments. One I heard this evening and one stemming from a visit at Lombardi School last year. So what I pull away from the presentation tonight from the administrative staff of the school is how they're recognizing what students are doing both in their learning and in their development. This last slide is how do we recognize students who are developing into the kind of people that we really desire as our neighbors and coworkers and friends. And the earlier slides were about looking at where students are trying to improve in their learning. So an example would be the comment that I heard from Principal Morrison about mathematic conversions. It's one of the most challenging mathematical operations that students face, and that's why we spend so much time on it from K to 10 and then onwards, actually, even I think about the math curriculum. And the reason for that is we need students to be able to understand proportion and concepts about translating one kind of measure into another, and that's a great example from what you were sharing this evening. Another example of recognizing student learning came from when I visited the school last year, and the students in grade 7 and 8, I think it was, they had their own science fair, but it was topics that were that you wouldn't think was science oriented, but they were using the scientific method. For example, one student had bought different kinds of chewing gum and wanted to test what kind of gum lasted longest, and then did a survey to see whether or not other people thought that was the case as well. Other students were using household products and comparing whether certain products did the test. One was dish soap, and how did it compare to other dish soap. I just saw some really practical things that made students really light up and be very engaged in what was happening at the school. It's phenomenal how much the school was behind what was happening that afternoon, where all the students were going through the classroom and looking at the exhibits. And we talk about student voice all the time. The students were providing the explanation and the demonstration of what was happening at their booth, and explaining what the scientific method was and why they were so clear on the conclusions. So there's a lot of great things happening in our schools, and that includes Lombardi School. And I'm very pleased that you could share what you're doing this evening with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Principal Morrison. Concerned a little bit about students answering open-ended questions. Do you see any correlation between the use of smartphones, texting, and the inability to answer open-ended questions?
Through you, Chair McMillan, that's a really good question. It certainly would serve to look into that more closely. I think certainly at my level, or the elementary level, that we do see a use of we do see technology being used on a regular basis. I'm not necessarily sure at this point that it would have an impact on a child's ability to read and come up with a couple of points to put down on paper and then be able to articulate that with a pencil. It's certainly something that I think we want to balance with what we're doing. I mean, we don't want to hold our children back, and yet we still want them to be able to, articulate, as I said, on paper using, the more traditional tools.
Trustee McAllister.
Thank you very much for your presentation. My first impression is that this is a school that I would want to send my kids to.
Oh, thank you.
Because of the involvement that is going on, and I'm particularly impressed with the way that you've dealt with the Tell Them For Me survey results. I know you must have a lot of parental involvement. You didn't mention it, but could you elaborate on how parents are involved, or what efforts you are making to involve parents?
Through you, Chair McMillan, one of the things that I didn't allude to was the fact that we have a tremendous parental involvement. We have retired teachers that come back and read to kids on a weekly basis. We have retired teachers and parents that will come out and help support the local track meet at the school. We run, and I didn't speak to this, but for years the Lombardy community holds an annual turkey dinner, and we utilize the fairgrounds on a school day, and we have two settings, and what we do is typically the parents and grandparents will come back and donate the food, cook the turkeys, and serve those to the children, so that everybody in that community has an opportunity to have sort of a good old-fashioned holiday turkey dinner, if you will, or Christmas dinner. The meals are covered, and in that process the community will gather canned food items, and we challenge each class to see who can come up with the most food items for the local food bank. So it really does have a sense of fostering a great community, and it's been going on. I can't take any credit for that in the sense that it's something that has been built into the culture of that building, that high sense of caring. And again, I would say that parents are a driving catalyst in helping us be, the best that we can.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Clarkner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, and I was quite interested to hear about the evaluation that you're doing with your students, then with your staff, and with the community. And you probably aren't finished all of that yet, but have you had any feedback about any of those as of yet, or are we going to get that on your next presentation down the road?
Through you, Chair McMillan. Yes, we've had I don't know that we've completed the staff survey. The staff are in the process of completing the survey. The students have completed, this will be the third year we've done Tell Them For Me for grade 5, 6, 7, and 8. And each year the data, is tweaked, but I think the more important thing is what you do with that. And so really trying to listen to student voice and how can we improve things in the building. The community survey has been done basically sort of volunteers, parents giving us feedback. Sometimes, again, using social media, they will provide some input on things. But we're not at a point yet where I would say I'd be able to comment on the community survey.
Thank you. Do I have anyone on the phone lines that'd like to have has a question or a comment? Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. Mark, welcome to the role and welcome to the board table. I'm sure this won't be the last time we see you. Dave, thank you very much. Safe travels, Chairman. Thank you. All right, moving on to our next presentation. This is going to be the Stewart School, and I'm going to turn this over to Superintendent Barrett, and I'll let you do the introductions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to welcome to the board table this evening Dean Fournier, who is the principal of the Stewart School, and Tabitha Valiant, who is the vice principal. The Stewart School is in the town of Perth, and Dean has a strong community connection to the village of Perth, and Tabitha is new to the Stewart School. And the Stewart School is located right in proximity to the swimming community center, and so they have some very nice connections and some opportunities for students. And it's a school that focuses its strengths in student achievement and also on student well-being. So look forward to hearing our presentation this evening.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, it's a real honor to be here tonight to share with you some of the great things that are happening at Stewart School. I'm also very proud to be a grade 8 graduate of the school many years ago. This is my third year here as principal, and I brought our vice principal, Tabitha Valiant, with us here tonight. So Stewart was built in 2006 and is in Ward 2 in the town of Perth with Bill McPherson. We are a dual-track school having immersion and core, the regular French program. About 370 students this year with a capacity of 415 students. So our catchment area, we're the French immersion school for the north end of Perth, Maple Grove catchment, and the Drummond Central School catchment for the French immersion. We are currently using one of the two classrooms that are connected to the Perth pool. It's the remainder of the old building, and we have one classroom out there, as I mentioned. Even though we are in the town limits, 83% of our students are bused to our school. 23% of our households have less than a $30,000 annual income, which is above average for the board, and so we have many low-income families in our catchment area. At Stewart School, our goal is to create or to mold kids that are good kids, that are kind and respectful kids, resilient, and they show a little bit of grit, and of course, we want them to be smart kids. I'm hoping that throughout the presentation tonight, you will get a glimpse of some of the ways that we're working towards these goals. As you can see from our EQAO data, the data shows some growth for our students. In reading and writing, you can see that there have been some improvements, such as a student cohort from grade 3 in 2012 and 13. They have improved immensely when they took the test in grade 6. So they've gone from 28% to 74%, for an increase of 61%. In our 2013-14 cohort, our reading assessment increased by 6%. We feel that this is a result of our interventions we've implemented and the emphasis on strategies such as targeted guided reading and our Empower program. These assessments are preceded by diagnostic assessments indicating student strengths and next steps required for student improved achievement. You can't hide the red squares. We're very concerned about our EQAO results in math. As a leader, we're looking for the good in the students' work. We are embracing the opportunities to improve our math scores, which will be indicative in our math SIPs in a couple of slides from now. We've been working hard with our staff and have an excellent relationship with our learning partner on using recommendations from our renewed math strategies. We're working on making the math visible, using tools to clarify understanding. We value the math processes and procedures, and we're providing ample opportunities for students to justify and explain their thinking.
So I'm going to speak to our literacy SIPSA specifically. Our overall goal this year has been to really focus on reading comprehension. We've done a lot of work, as Principal Fournier mentioned in the past, with regards to guided reading and decoding, and we wanted to sort of move that to the next level. So what we're doing this year is we're specifically focusing on something called the Wheel of Strategic Action. And what that is it's a wheel that just clearly shows us the thinking that good readers engage in as they read and process a text. Our intention is that by the end of this school year, 90% of our primary students will have increased the complexity of their reading comprehension strategies and show an increase in their reading levels. We're targeting for at least 5 levels. Improvement. So really the key work that we've been doing in literacy is grounded in moving past that decoding and moving into true comprehension. We started by building capacity using the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment kit. And we chose that assessment because it really gives us an idea of where kids are going in terms of their comprehension skills. We use that data and to target specific reading comprehension strategies so that our teachers could move our focus students. Specifically, we targeted the focus students, but we wanted to move our classes as a whole. And so we started with strategies that focused on thinking within the text and understanding the text. We did pre and post benchmark testing and along with other assessments, and we implemented our intentional teacher moves, observed what was going on, had conversations with the students. We come together as a team and reflect and debrief on how those strategies are working. And so we're really building teacher capacity with regard to decoding, moving past decoding and guided reading into things like retell and prediction. And what you're seeing in the photos in the slideshow is one example of one of the tools we're using for our retells. So getting the students to think about what happens first, what happens next, and what happens at the end of the text, and being able to explain that to us effectively. So the idea here is that we want to move to making connections. We want our students to be able to connect to the text that they're reading as the year moves on. So we're doing explicit and repeated modeling with our students of the strategies. And we've had some pretty amazing results already. At our last SIPSA meeting, all of our marker students were achieving beyond our expectations. They had all moved at 2 to 3 levels in their reading. So far things are working. We're being very intentional in focusing on the comprehension because we really feel that that's the key to success, not just in literacy, right? We recognize the fact that reading, it's very complex. Our students are being asked to read a wide variety of texts, far beyond that which is just written, and they need to be able to engage with those texts. And we know that building a solid reading foundation is absolutely fundamental to accessing the entire curriculum on a myriad of levels. The team's been working really hard to extend reading skills so that we can get students to engage in critical thinking. That's our end game, right? The end goal here is to prepare our students for successful life, and critical thinking is becoming so much more important for our 21st century learner that we really have to move towards that.
In math, we've focused on naming the math, so it's consistent across the grades from grades 1 to 6 in our learning teams. In our last year, our learning team consisted of grades 1 to 6 teachers, and that was consistent throughout the school. Our EQAO data from last year clearly showed that the application and thinking and inquiry-type questions in the open response area required additional practice. And that is our focus for this year. Explicitly teaching a problem-solving model to the students with a gradual release of responsibility. So we feel that repeated practice solving these types of problems, dissecting the problem so the students will be able to be successful in 3 different areas. 1, do they know what the question is asking them? 2, can they make a plan to solve that question? And 3, can they actually do the math to solve the problem? Our first SIPSA cycle showed some improvements, but it also uncovered that further practice and understanding is still required. We are continuing the same plan for our next SIPSA cycle. As you can see from our slide, Stewart School offers many opportunities for our students, and some of them are pictured here. These opportunities allow the students to express themselves in ways other than in an academic setting. Our staff and volunteers go the extra mile daily to provide for the students. Starting from the top left, when moving clockwise, we have a picture of students helping with our recycling. We are a silver medal winner from Eco Schools last year. To the right, we have one of our many high-achieving sports teams. And to that right, we have a student playing a ukulele. Band instruments, bucket drumming, and recorders are being used in our music program. Middle right, we have a picture of our musical from last year called The Big Bad Musical. We will begin this year's musical in the next couple of weeks, which is called Alice at Wonderland. The bottom right picture, some staff and a class helped organize the Christmas gifts for the Angel Tree program. The bottom middle picture, I'm not exactly sure what this is, but this is from our Maker Night, last year organized from our school council. Parents and their children came together to design and build many different items incorporating science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Maker Night 2018 is going to be bigger and better. Our school council has spearheaded this initiative, and they've teamed up with school councils in the Perth family of schools to apply for a Pro Grant. We will be using these funds to host our own evening here and then bring all the schools together on a Maker Day on Saturday, April 14th. Community members will be involved as guest makers, as well as many parents and students. The bottom left picture shows a very active Wii Club that we have at our school, having fun at the Wii Day in Ottawa this past fall. They are beginning a sock drive for homeless adults next week. Making the world a better place locally and globally is their motto. We also have many other clubs and activities such as a Lego club, a quilting club led by teacher and community volunteers, an annual talent show, fitness nights monthly organized by our fantastic school council, a ski club, a gardening club organized by volunteers, which also involved a partnership with a local food bank called The Table, as well as intramural sports during recess. This past fall, we conducted a student survey. As the director says, nothing about us without us. It's imperative to include our students in decision making. What did we learn from the survey? 90% say that using Kelso's Choices is helpful. Kelso's Choices is a school-wide conflict resolution program. It's a framework with common language for all the students to help solve their problems. 92% of Kelso's Choices, 92% use Kelso's Choices to help solve conflicts with others. We learned our students have many friends or few friends at school. We learned our students feel safe at school, and 95% feel safe talking to an adult at school if there are issues. Our staff are continually available and offering support to those students who are feeling stress in their lives on a proactive basis. Mindfulness is being implemented in some classes. This is a tool that staff use to help students be more aware of the emotions and to build resiliency and coping mechanisms. Our school-wide nutrition program, we spend about $12,000 a year to make sure our kids are fed. It's a lot easier to learn and cope with stressors when one is not hungry. Our Scientists in Schools program, guest scientists come to our school to teach and to motivate students about various science topics. Our final slide, I'm extremely proud of. During the student survey, an open-ended question was asked of the student body. What parts of our school are you most proud of? I thought the board table would like to see some of the responses to this question. As you can see from the summary of responses presented in this Wordle, where size of the word represents the frequency of responses, the most popular response had to do with the caring staff that we have at Stewart School. The students responded with, my teacher, all our great teachers, how the teachers teach us responsibility, nice and kind teachers, The teachers are friendly and helpful, that there are adults to comfort you. I think you get the drift. I couldn't agree more with the students. The staff are very caring in their approach to try to teach using best practices and to ensure that students are cared for in the best possible manner. This may include providing shoes or clothes, food, or just opportunities for those students in need. Caring staff was followed closely by our sports teams, our music program, the math we learn, our large clean playground, our gym, technology we use or have access to. Even the word everything was a frequent response. I would like to leave you with a response from one grade 2 girl. You can see it, it's the smallest font because only one person said it. She was proud of Stewart School for being, quote, an overall great school. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you some of the great things happening at Stewart School.
Thank you very much. Trustee Bill McPherson, did you get online tonight? I know that Bill would be extremely proud of the fact that caring staff came out as the biggest in that wordle. And of course, it's evident to see why the staff is caring, because you folks are so caring yourselves. Director, do you want to say something?
If I could, Mr. Chair, thank you. Through you, two things I wanted just to comment on. When Vice Principal Valiant mentioned about the emphasis on critical thinking and the connection to preparing students for life, we can't lose sight of how that's so important and why we spend the amount of time that we do focusing on higher order thinking and presenting challenge in the assessment and evaluations that we provide to students. We really do want students to not only think, but also to be independent in their thinking so that they can make good choices as adults, and that we can trust in them as we need their care and support later in life. The other thing that maybe trustees didn't hear, and Principal Fournier was didn't include this in his presentation, is that the Stewart School grows leaders for our board. So we had a bit of a need, unexpected need for support at one of our schools when one of our principals went on leave. And we reached out to Mr. Fournier and the Stewart School, and we were so happy that at that time Vice Principal Val Horsfall could help us out, and making sure that we didn't leave the school in the lurch. We had Danielle Bell, who came in and worked as an acting vice principal, and grew another leader there as well, from what I can see and what I've heard about the school. So our schools take all kinds of steps to work as a team with other schools, and that's one great example, and we're very indebted to what the Stewart School did for us last year. So great staff, and staff with great potential, I would say, is what I heard this evening. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Director. Trustee Cram.
Thank you, Director. Very impressed overall with the reading and the writing and the work that has gone into gathering the results and what's happened with the cohorts, as well as your plans to keep and improve those results. If I turn to math, though, for a moment, I noticed from the 2013-14 cohort to now that the results have gone down each time. I was just wondering if you have any plans to identify why that has happened, and where do we go from here?
Through you, Chair. Actually, yes, we have. Our plans are congruent with the renewed math strategy. Our team is very involved in using best practices. I can say that I've worked with a lot of staffs over my education career, and that this is one of the most professional staffs I've worked with. They're very eager to take on new learnings, and from our learning teams and from those strategies that are being introduced to us, they're being implemented. It's not just say I'm going to do that. I walk in the classrooms, I'm in the classrooms every day, and they are being implemented. So we're hoping with under the leadership of Shelley Corleone and the math team and the learning partners, that those strategies being implemented are going to improve our results as well.
Thank you. Do I have anyone else at the table? Trustee McAllister?
Thank you very much. I can appreciate why you value the last slide in particular. And I think it's indicative of what really counts in a school, and something that I think potential parents and students should look at when they are selecting a school. I'm wondering if you could comment on the music program in particular.
Absolutely, through you, Chair. So our music program is instrumental music program with a dedicated teacher for half of the day from grades 4 to 6. She has a wealth of knowledge and expertise, which I don't have, but she is implementing, as I said, bucket drumming, band instruments, so she's using everything from the trombones to the trumpets to the wind instruments. She's also doing ukuleles, and we are actually have the benefit of having that done in French on the French immersion side of the day. So it's a real feather in our cap and in Madame McDonald's cap to be able to do that. And as part of the musical, she's very involved in that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Kartner.
Thank you, Chair. Just a comment. Thank you both for your presentation. I can sense the enthusiasm, and especially from you, Tabitha. I've got to know Tabitha in years past when she was a vice principal at Russell High School. The enthusiasm that you have for the literacy portion of your school is refreshing, and you can see it in your voice, and I'm sure it turns that way in the school as well. So thank you both for your enthusiasm for the students.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do I have anyone on the telephone lines? Well, I know I have people on the telephone lines.
I'm on the line.
Do I have any questions or comments? Well, I thank both of you very much for the presentation. Safe travels home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the next, as an action item. We're looking at the annual update of health and safety policies. I'm going to be turning this over to Superintendent Barclay, who's going to be working with Dennis Pollock in a moment. I have three motions, but I think we're looking at three policies, one dealing with workplace harassment, one dealing with violence in the workplace, and one dealing with occupational health and safety. Would it be wise to take one motion at a time? Okay, so if I were, usually I get the motion on the floor first. I think that'd probably be the best thing to do for each one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have the first motion, then we'll address that particular policy. So the motion is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 226, safe workplace harassment, with a review date of January 24th, 2019. Would it be?
18.
Or an 18 right now. Okay. January 24th, 2018. Moved by Trustee Kartner, seconded by Trustee Cram. So I'm going to ask, okay, so I'll turn that part over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll introduce Dennis Kaluk and thank him for being here this evening. He is the board's health and safety specialist. And he is going to, I guess, we'll start with the safe workplace harassment policy 226. Okay. And Dennis will review the policy, and it's a requirement that this be reviewed annually. Therefore, the date of today.
Got it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, so this is this is an action item for an opportunity to review this policy 226. It's an annual obligation under the Occupational Safety Act. It also provides guidance in our safety programs to our staff. So all these three that we're going to be going through are required under legislation to be reviewed, or to actually be prepared and then reviewed annually under the Occupational Health and Safety Act. So there's been no changes to this one since our last one. Prior to that, we did have a change to this one, but this one there's been no changes to it, so it is the same way that we saw it last year.
Okay. Do I have any comments or questions on that? Anyone on the phone lines with a comment or question? Seeing that I don't, I have the motion before me that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 226, safe workplace harassment, with a review date of January 24, 2018, moved by Trustee Kartner, seconded by Trustee Cram. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please.
I'm in favor, but I just don't have a computer, right? You know them?
Thank you. And that, Trustee Cram? That carries. You're in favor. Thank you very much. Moving on to the second motion. have those in front of me there, is that the motion would be that the Upper Canada District School Board approve policy 421, violence in the workplace, with a review date of January 24, 2018. Moved by, I need a mover and a seconder. Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Karkner. And I'll turn this over to Dennis. You feel like kind of like the lone man down there?
Yeah, no wing person like everybody else did tonight.
I know. I'm looking down at the end of the table, and you're all by yourself down there. I'm going to turn that over to you.
Okay, so this one is the policy 421, violence in the workplace. Again, this is the one that needs to be reviewed annually, and it gives direction to our staff for health and safety as far as violence in the workplace goes. Again, as I said before, for the other policy, this needs to be prepared and reviewed at least annually, and also and I should have said before, all three of these have gone before the Joint Health and Safety Committee, our board's Joint Health and Safety Committee, for review, and have been accepted at that committee before they came here too.
Okay, thank you. Comments or questions? Trustee McAllister.
I have a question with regard to violence in the workplace.
Yes.
This is a phenomenon which we hear is increasingly concerning to our staff and to us as well. What has the Occupational Health and Safety Joint Committee had to say about this? That's my first question. My second one is, do you anticipate regulatory changes in the future from the government on this policy?
I think that's before the director wants to start, and I'm sure I'll pass it off to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, through you, sir. In terms of the first question, I think I would like trustees to be aware of one of the corresponding factors here is there's a culture of support and care in our schools that includes when there is a workplace level concern about violence in the workplace, that it should be reported. Over the last 8 years, when the legislation had changed, we didn't have either the same definition of what was constituted workplace violence, or we didn't have the mechanisms that we had now in terms of reporting and follow-up. So I'd like to suggest to the board that when we see those numbers, we need to take any kind of view of statistics or the level of acknowledgement in the public domain these days as evidence that our policies and our practices are working insofar as having any of our employees coming forward and reporting if they've experienced this kind of event while at work. The other part is we're hearing from the Ministry of Education an increased emphasis on training and reporting and documentation as it relates to all elements of occupational health and safety, but including safe workplaces and workplace violence. So we do think that there are a number of factors that we need to take into account as part of the presentation this evening, and I think in with respect to the trustee's question as well. But I'd like to turn it over to both Dennis and to Superintendent Barkley, because they would be, I think, involved in the details of what might be linked to that question, or both questions.
Okay, through you, Chair McMillan. One thing that, as far as the legislation goes, one thing that there's nothing on the table at this point right now to change legislation. One thing that is interesting is currently the Ministry of Labor and Ministry of Education are jointly working together in an initiative to visit the different school boards and find out exactly what type of violence they're looking at in the schools, and what type of in the school boards, what your programs, what kind of programs you have set up. We have guidelines and reporting forms for any type of incident that takes place in our schools or our locations. So they're going around, they're looking at that information, they're collecting that. So I can see something coming out of that. They haven't said what that's going to look like yet. They're in a collection mode right now. So we'll be seeing them sometime in February, March to go over that information when they visit our school board.
supplementary, if I could. Thank you both for answering the second question, but nobody answered the first question, which was, what kind of input have you had at the Joint Health and Safety Committee?
Well, sorry, through you, Chair. Yeah, so at the Joint Health and Safety Committee, we had a number of discussions. We've done updates. So we have reporting forms and guidelines that we use within our schools. Our guidelines have been modified with the Joint Health and Safety Committee's input as things take place in the workplace. Our reporting forms have also been modified to reflect changes in the workplace. We've used the behaviorist teams to help us with definitions for certain reporting forms we have that we use in the school boards, or in the schools, sorry. So there's been a lot of input, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of involvement by the Joint Health and Safety Committee.
Thank you.
Are there any more comments or questions? Anyone on the phone lines? Okay, seeing there are no more comments or questions, I have a motion before me. Moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Cartner, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 421, Violence in the Workplace, with a review date of January 24, 2018. I'll ask you to cast your votes, please. And Trustee carries. Trustee McDonald carries anyways. Thank you very much. That carries. Thank you, Trustee McDonald. Okay, moving on to the third motion, which is that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 424, Occupational Health and Safety, with a review date of January 24, 2018. I need a mover and a seconder. Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee McAllister, and turn it over to you.
Through you, Chair. So Policy 424 is the Occupational Health and Safety policy that governs, but gives direction to our staff and to our operations on how we handle health and safety overall within our school board. It needs to be prepared and at least reviewed at least annually, just like the other ones. Again, this one's gone through the committee, the Joint Health and Safety Committee, and has been accepted at that committee as it stands.
Okay, thank you very much. Again, I open it up to comments or questions. Seeing there are none, we have a motion before us, moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee McAllister, that the Upper Canada District School Board approve Policy 424, Occupational Health and Safety, with a review date of January 24, 2018. I should take your vote, please. That's not coming up. Okay, there it is. Thank you. And that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next is a report from Special Education Advisory Committee, and the chair, Bill McPherson. Trustee McPherson is not able to make this presentation tonight, but I know that Superintendent Val Allen is, so I'm going to turn this over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Our last meeting of this RCAC committee was held on January 9th here in the boardroom. It was our organizational meeting, so we had the election of the chair and the vice chair, and Trustee Bill McPherson was acclaimed as the chair, and Kimberly Wright was nominated and acclaimed as the vice chair for 2018 year. We had a number of presentations at the meeting. We started off, I did a presentation with an overview of the director's work plan to familiarize SEAC with that plan and its contents. And then we had, we welcomed Superintendent Dawes and Mills to come to our SEAC looking at one of the goals, goal number 4, which connects with community stakeholders beyond our policy requirements. So the two superintendents gave an overview of that goal in the director's work plan and posed a number of questions to the SEAC committee, and they're outlined in the report that you have before you. As a result of that, we decided that the group decided that they'd like some time to reflect on that, and at our next meeting they will bring back and we will have discussions and collect data to provide back to Superintendent Dawes and Superintendent Mills in regards to those questions. I also presented a report with an update on accessibility, just giving an overview of where we are with our accessibility committee and the next steps on that. And we will have, we are looking for a SEAC representative to be on that committee. Lastly, we had information from the Ministers' Advisory Council on Special Education, and they also were looking for feedback, and we just recently submitted the report on that. We did review, again, the Special Education Plan and did some, reviewed the IPRC placements and the accessibility statements in our plan as part of our multi-year review of our SEAC plan. That's the end of my report.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions? Trustee Karkner.
Thank you, Chair. Superintendent Allen, on the questions that SEAC to review and discuss by February 6th, are those 4 questions in relation to the work that SEAC does, or are they just open general questions about the board in general? When I read them, I have a hard time making a connection between SEAC and the whole board.
Right.
So go ahead.
Through you, Chair, perhaps I'll start, and our other superintendents may be able to help with that. They are the standard questions that they're posing to many groups within our organization as well as community groups, and SEAC being a committee, that's why we felt it was an opportunity for them to bring forth any comments or ideas they have from their parent groups or organizational representative groups. Anything to add to that?
Through the chair, agree and support Superintendent Allen's comments. They're similar to the questions that we presented to principals and vice principals at our most recent LLMA, Leadership and Learning module in December. The intention is to make them open enough that we can get a variety of feedback and understand those connections that we can make with that particular goal. So they're a bit loose by design, and also we wanted to have the same questions formatted in a similar way for multiple applications across the board.
A follow-up?
Yes, certainly.
To Superintendent Dawes, perhaps. So these questions are being asked of different groups within the board, but you're hoping to get answers that relate to the job that they're doing or the program they're involved in?
Thank you. Through the chair, that specific goal is to get a deeper understanding of how our particular groups are making connections with the larger community. So again, the questions are open-ended enough that any participant in the question can provide their particular personal or professional context. Mm-hmm. In this situation, we would hope that SEAC would present a view for us that's specific to SEAC, but it's not specific to that specificity if they don't feel that they wanted to take it in that direction.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to our next item. OPSPA Director David McDonald, are you prepared to do a report where you are?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
Okay.
I'll turn this over to you.
A comment in earlier. Just quickly on OPSPA, we are having a public education symposium this weekend. The pre-symposium starts tomorrow. The full symposium starts tomorrow evening and goes until Saturday afternoon. Of note is that from a legislative update is that we do have a new Minister of Education and hopeful that she'll be present. She did speak to us in the past whenever she had the portfolio of early years. Other pieces of information that are worth updating trustees on is January 26th, there's a release of a new module for the trustee professional development series completed by the Ontario Education Services Corporation through OPSPA. That next module is a journey towards truth and reconciliation. It'll be a video that will take trustees through that process of accomplishing and working towards some of the recommendations that were within the TRC report. The other piece of information that I wanted to share with trustees is that there are awards coming up at our annual general meeting. A series of awards are presented by OPSPA on a various number of levels. Trustees can be recognized for their outstanding service, whether they be past or present trustees, so retired or current. We also have an opportunity to recognize students that are in a public education system, whether they be elementary or secondary, and an opportunity to recognize members of our staff, whether they be educators or particularly an award for individuals who are non-educators but contribute to the positive impact for our learning for kids. That's the information that I have for you right now. I will add, though, that the Board of Directors meeting is scheduled for the 23rd and 24th of February. So I'll have a further update once the Board of Directors meeting is completed. There will be a regional meeting on Saturday morning at, I think it's 8:30, that I'll be chairing in the absence of our regional director, regional president, being ill. So look forward to seeing people this weekend in Toronto and bringing positive energy back to our board as a result of our professional development.
Thank you very much, Trustee McDonald. Do you have any comments or questions? And safe travels to anyone that is going to Toronto. It's, I know some have arrived, some are leaving tonight, some are leaving tomorrow. So safe travels to each and every one of you. Thank you very much for that report. We're now going to move into the Committee of the Whole, and then ultimately into private session. So I need a motion that the Upper Canada District School Board move into Committee of the Whole, moved by Trustee Cram, seconded by Trustee Kirkner. Thank you very much. Can I ask you to cast your votes on that, please? And it should carry. Thank you very much. And the second motion is that the Committee of the Whole move into private session January the 24th, 2018, moved by Trustee McAllister, seconded by Trustee Kirkner. Cast your votes, please. And that carries. Thank you very much. We're moving into private session. We'll just wait, make sure we get our phone